Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Polo at Whitney Field in beautiful Aiken, South Carolina, home of the oldest polo field in the United States of America, playing continuous here for 106 years.
Known for its fair weather and rejuvenating spring waters, Aiken's economy was built on the spending of rich wintertime residents. Here the Whitneys, Vanderbilts, and Astors gathered to do battle on the polo fields. Proudly promoted as the sports capital of the South, Aiken was soon to host what some call the starting gate of the arms race.
Now, in 1950, it was announced we was going to have a bomb plant in here. My mother began to wonder, and everybody wondered about what was going to happen and people moving out.
The Ellenton, South Carolina birthplace of Evelyn Couch was condemned by the U.S. government to build the Savannah River plant. That was just the beginning of a startling change in her life.
Well, the way I would describe it was almost like the gold rush days. Everybody coming in from everywhere all over the United States to work. We had 35,000 people to move in here, where we had a 13,000 population, so you can know what that can do. We even turned horse stables into apartments. We had a lot of trailer courts set up, a lot of new towns and communities set up.
I think the relationship between the communities surrounding the Savannah River plant and the operation itself and the people who work here is very, very good, is very strong. It has taken some time for it to get to that point.
To make way for the world's first hydrogen bomb manufacturing complex, the Atomic Energy Commission swallowed up 300 square miles of land in 3 counties, an area 4 times the size of Washington, D.C. Whole towns were wiped off the map forever. 6,000 people from 1,500 different families had to move. Even the dead left their final resting place. Evelyn's home became a temporary office for DuPont.
The construction of SRP is listed in the Guinness Book of World Records, and it certainly is one of the largest construction projects that has been undertaken in modern times.
They had to move the people out and bought their land. Some got a fair price for it. Not many got the fair price that they could set up in other places with at all.
Those relocations were done without a great deal of turmoil or upset. Of course, there were deep family ties to some of the areas, to some of the small towns, and naturally those people hated to leave.
They had one couple in the area that refused to sell. They had lived at this home place, a brother and a sister. And they got their shotguns out, but then they put them in a mental institution and took the land anyway.
Where the broad Savannah flows along to meet the mighty sea, there stood a peaceful village that meant all the world to me. It was a home of happy people, I knew each and every one. All my kin and all the friends I love, the town was seldom done. But the military came one day and filled our hearts with woe. We'll study war right here, they said, the little town must go. Then they came with trucks and dynamite, the din and dust rose high, and I stood and gazed in silence there and watched my hometown die.
With destruction came prosperity. Many people who formerly labored in sawmills and cotton fields now found themselves part of the nation's most top-secret industrial mission. From construction work to scientific testing, there was a feeling of glory and importance in working at the Savannah River plant, much like the later glamour of the space race. With the promise of good-paying jobs, challenging work, and the chance to contribute to the nation's security, the future seemed bright. It was high times. The DuPont Company, chosen by the Atomic Energy Commission to build and run the plant, brought in engineers and physicists from all over the country. One of them was Art Dexter, a former World War II navigator bombardier. He was completing a graduate degree in physics when he received a reserve call-up for Korea.
The offer from DuPont differed from the others in that most of the other companies, like North American, said that they wouldn't touch me with a 10-foot pole once they learned of the call-up that I had to go to Korea. They didn't have high enough priority to circumvent my call-up. But the DuPont company surprised me in saying, oh, this was no problem with them. They could get around that.
His thesis professor advised him not to get caught up in weapons work. Although he too had misgivings, he thought he could better serve his country as a physicist. And it was a remarkable opportunity.
Yes, I did feel that it was a most unusual experience to be out of school and find myself involved in what was apparently such an important project. It was interesting working at the Savannah River plant in early times, I think. There were lots of challenging problems. Buildings were just coming into existence in laboratories, and we were all interested in seeing what we'd have and to work with and what problems we might have. And it was somewhat heady, I guess you could say. We just went about our job and tried to perhaps carry this project through, make it successful, and hopefully to keep up or surpass the Russians if they were headed in the same direction.
In less than 2 years, the area had moved from farms and mules into the atomic age. The main products were no longer cotton and vegetables. They were radioactive elements, plutonium and tritium. Plutonium, the main explosive in atomic bombs, later became only the trigger of the much more powerful hydrogen bomb, which adds tritium gas to boost its destructive power. After emerging from the reactors, plutonium and tritium must be chemically separated from their byproducts. Due to extremely high radiation levels, this is done by remote control in enclosed areas so huge they are called canyons. No human being has been inside these canyons since they were sealed in 1954. Their once firm concrete floors now have a sponge-like consistency from years of intense radiation. After the Savannah River plant's reactors were up and running, Arthur Dexter wanted to leave his job and find non-military work. But he found out that many companies would not consider him because he was too old. He became afraid to risk his family's security.
Again, I hate to indicate that I was a slave of sorts to the paycheck, but in a sense I was. I still had a family, and I had to wait until I could legitimately retire, so I stayed on a while.
In 1963, Art Dexter was transferred into a new research project at the plant. He considered it a plum assignment because it was on the cutting edge of physics research.
I had no particular qualms about going into it at the time. Like many assignments that people get, it seemed innocent enough in itself. It was basically the study of the movement of gases like hydrogen through various materials. And it seemed quite innocent. And it was only later that I realized that I was actually working on weapons components.
He was working with tritium, the essential ingredient for building hydrogen bombs. The number of nuclear weapons in the U.S. arsenal was highly classified. Even Art Dexter had little idea how many there were. Then one day, his high-level security clearance got him an invitation to visit the vault where tritium containers, each representing a number of bombs in the arsenal, were stored. He saw hundreds and hundreds of containers stacked along the walls. He realized that during his years at the plant, the country's stockpile had grown to greater than 30,000 of the bombs dropped on Nagasaki.
It seemed rather obscene. I just could not conceive of our need for that many weapons. And I looked at these containers and walked over and put my hand on one of them and felt the warmth of it. The radioactive decay going on within it served to warm the container. And it was as though each of these had a life of its own. They were a warm entity. It filled me with a sense of revulsion. I went away and felt that I had to do some thinking about what I'd seen and what I was involved in.
We now return to Building Bombs on Discovery Journal.
There's no question about this in my mind. If we didn't have those things going on that are going on here at Savannah River Plant and other installations across this country, we probably would not be enjoying the freedoms of this beautiful October evening here in Aiken, South Carolina, but we'd probably be working in the salt mine somewhere in Siberia. I've seen some statistics that say that we've had over $30 billion brought into South Carolina as a result of the nuclear industry. $30 billion is an awful lot of money.
Stretching far beyond South Carolina, the nuclear weapons industry is big business throughout the United States. It employs over 100,000 workers and owns more land than Delaware and Rhode Island combined. Altogether, this system has produced over 60,000 nuclear weapons. Images of the apocalypse fill the mind when we think of hydrogen bombs. Less dramatic, but just as deadly, are the wastes left over after manufacturing them. Buried beneath these covers and gauges are 51 underground tanks containing over 35 million gallons of the world's most radioactive and toxic wastes. They have 4-foot-thick concrete roofs to shield workers from the radioactive sludge.
Well, if you had a bottle of it sitting here on the table, which you wouldn't because it's radioactive, it'd be a brown liquid. It has, mostly it's a sodium nitrate solution. Fission products that are in high-level waste are a whole range of strange fellas. The major long-lived activities in there are strontium-90 and cesium-137. They're the ones that take the longest to decay, the fission products. Others are shorter. You have cerium, promethium, ruthenium, and a whole lot of other strange names.
A number of accidents among the tanks due to faulty design and human error have allowed high-level radiation to escape to the surrounding soil.
Over the years, 9 of the tanks, the older design tanks, have developed cracks. Leaks developed in tank 16 just a few months after it was put into service. It's a 1 million-gallon tank of the old design, not the modern design. The waste overflowed the 5-foot-high annulus pan into the soil surrounding the tank. It's in the water table, and over the intervening years, it's just staying there. It plugs the soil, and it's immobilized so that there's not movement.
But radioactive waste leakage is not confined to just the tanks at the Savannah River Plant. Here, And at other weapons plants, the Energy Department is suffering from what some call a high-yield hangover from a 40-year binge of building bombs. The morning after has arrived, along with the downside of South Carolina's nuclear prosperity. For nearly 4 decades into the 1980s, the Energy Department and DuPont operated the Savannah River plant with exemption from federal pollution laws. The Energy Department disposes of solid radioactive waste the same way as municipal garbage. They bury it. At the Savannah River plant, the DuPont company has buried more than 19 million cubic feet of radioactive waste. That's enough to fill up a 100-story skyscraper the size of a football field. As senior technical engineer with the Energy Department, Bill Lawless oversaw DuPont's radioactive waste management practices. In 1980, he was assigned to conduct a study of the nuclear waste burial ground, a 192-acre landfill. DuPont didn't keep accurate records of what they buried there, so Bill Lawless faced quite a task.
I was asked to do it by my boss. It was not something that I had gone into willingly, because there was a lot of work involved. No one had really done a technical appraisal of any burial ground in the United States up until 1980. And so the appraisal technique had to be built from scratch.
Everything that becomes contaminated with radiation, from gloves to bulldozers, is buried in shallow trenches. The theory is that the radioactive waste will sit in the ground for several hundred years. Thousands and thousands of years in the case of plutonium, until it is no longer poisonous.
You know, it's very hard to make mistakes with low-level waste disposal. People have made mistakes with it, but it's very difficult to do it because it's basically a simple operation. The low-level waste decays just like municipal waste does. I mean, the stuff you ordinarily throw away from your kitchen, for instance, needs to be put away until the bacterial processes can make it harmless. And there is a similar property to low-level waste, which is radioactive decay, that renders it harmless.
I wanted to see a good burial ground appraisal written, and I wanted to see all of the stones uncovered and looked under. And after I'd been involved in it a few months, then I found out that only a very superficial report would be acceptable. In fact, the more superficial, the better. And so that began to cause me a fair amount of discomfort as early as 1980. Nonetheless, I decided to press ahead with a report and to see what happened with it.
With the Energy Department's blessing, DuPont buried the contaminated waste for 30 years in cardboard boxes.
Even though the radioactivity in each one of those cardboard boxes was, generally speaking, very low, collectively, it was a large amount of contamination. The use of cardboard boxes causes collapse of the trenches and collapse of the soil columns on top of the trenches, and is ultimately going to cause the failure of the burial ground. It has caused the failure of every burial ground in the United States.
Failure means radioactivity escapes beyond the boundaries of the burial ground.
The report had a profound effect or impact on DuPont, and DuPont called the Department of Energy and had the report recalled. A recall report is a finalized report that's taken back and converted into draft. And the reason it's converted into draft is so that that it cannot be accessed by the Freedom of Information or a Freedom of Information request. We were damaging the environment, all in the name of saving money. But the damage to the environment was going to be very, very expensive whenever we faced that bill.
Lawless was given the report back and asked to rewrite it. It was rejected again, and again, and again. After 2 years, management asked him to stop working on it. The report was killed.
Well, I was very disappointed because what others had told me was borne out. That is to say that only a very superficial report would be allowed to be published and sent to DuPont, and the more superficial, the better.
In the course of his work on the report, he realized that radioactive contamination was spreading beyond the burial ground. Lawless became alarmed over what he felt was a disregard for public safety.
So there's a lot of tritium, a lot of contamination that's built up over the years and has contaminated the groundwater underneath the burial ground as a result.
When this radioactive groundwater reaches a stream, it's called an outcrop. DuPont scientists badly miscalculated the probability of an outcrop.
DuPont first stated that the radioactivity that was being released from the burial ground itself was so low that it would never outcrop in the Savannah River tributary system surrounding the plant. And if it ever did outcrop, it would take at least 200 years. The first outcrop occurred in 1978, 1 year later.
The tritium is a very mobile species, behaves like water. It is indeed water. If you bury tritium in shallow land burial, you can count on it showing up in the groundwater, and it has in this case here at our site. But as far as has this posed a particular problem to the environment, it has not. Has it posed a particular problem to the future of that particular burial site? It has not. That site will need to be maintained for a period of at least 100 years, probably longer.
And today, the tritium in the background of the Savannah River tributaries is quite excessive, and in the burial ground itself can range up to 4,000 or 5,000 times the drinking water standard.
But the tritium leaking from the burial ground into the streams and the Savannah River itself is not the whole problem. Underneath the Savannah River plant lies an immense underground water formation, the Tuscaloosa Aquifer. The aquifer supplies water for drinking and irrigation to parts of South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. Lawless realized that this pure water source could be contaminated by the radioactive groundwater.
This is the water that overlays the Tuscaloosa aquifer itself, which cannot be broached according to DuPont, but which has been broached. It's a very large aquifer, one of the largest in the country.
While Lawless struggled with this dilemma, radioactive waste problems began to crop up at other Department of Energy plants across the country. The department could not meet its own guidelines for concentrations of plutonium in the soil, so they decided to lower their standards.
And there was a big meeting in August of '82, and where there was specifically trying to change one part of the guidelines, and that was for plutonium waste, the amount of plutonium concentrations or plutonium waste that could be left in the environment. The meeting also was discovered to be a sham. I found out early on during the meeting that the new regulation had already been signed into effect, and that regardless of what we said that week, that it really didn't matter because the Department of Energy headquarters had already signed the regulation. I felt like I should have pointed out that the meeting really had very little importance, practical importance, other than to whitewash what was going on, and so I felt really bad about that myself. There was one good opportunity to speak out, and it was on the last couple hours at the meeting, and I did not.
$14,000 people have jobs at the Savannah River plant today that wouldn't have them if it were not for the Savannah River plant. And they're not just common, ordinary laboring jobs. They're jobs, high technology jobs.
the influx of this many PhDs and Masters of Science and other people that have come into the area has had a tremendous influence on this city and this area and the state of South Carolina.
What began in 1950 as a surprise change of fate grew into a binding dependence on building bombs for a living. Not many residents publicly voice criticism. Most people who object to the plant live outside the area. In the early 1980s, protesters came from around the country to raise questions about the plant's mission and its environmental damage. One of the few locals to join them was Steve McMillan, a farmer concerned about contamination of his crops.
It seems like this area is eventually going to become a dumping ground for nuclear waste for the world. And what are we going to do when this nuclear waste gets into our water table at 600 feet? We'll all die, or we'll go north until we find good water.
I was born and raised in this county. I've been here all my life. I farmed. I served a brief period in the Navy in the Second World War. And I grow general row crops. I'm a general row crop farmer. My land's probably about 20 or 25 miles from Savannah River plant boundary. We all know that this plant produces the material to make hydrogen weapons. And we think that it is a definite hazard to our area.
It's given us about 30,000 jobs over the history of the industry, and it's kept us safe, and it's also elevated the intellectual environment of this town.
Aiken is really a DuPont town. All of our churches and all of our professional people, doctors, lawyers, and everything are DuPont people. I mean, they believe in DuPont because it's the money.
And like all company towns, whether it's a mill village or a mine village, they, keep their people under control. In Aiken, it's a little different because they keep them under control by paying them very good salaries.
This could be just a coincidence, but it seems to me like we have, when you have 4 or 5 people within a block of each other in one place dying with cancer, it seems like it's just too much of an instance.
Evelyn Couch's husband, George, worked at Savannah River as a maintenance mechanic in all areas of the plant, including repairing remote control arms. Like all employees, George Couch wore a film badge to detect his level of radiation exposure.
Some of the times we would go in to build, while I was in the carpenter shop, we would go in to build a scalpel right under the reactor itself. It was pin room, we called it. And we was told at the time that if you raised up while you'd be had an overdose, you might say you have to get out quick, like. In other words, maybe not an overdose, but more than you were supposed to have, and stay in it. So we would have to, might say, stoop down so we could put our scaffolding boards on and so forth and so on. At the time, it bugs me a little bit, we wore our film badge on the front of our clothing, so our body was actually absorbing sunlight before it ever got to the film badge.
For a number of years, George Couch suffered from health problems. Even so, DuPont discharged him on the grounds of poor job performance after 22 years of work. The same year, he was diagnosed as having polycythemia vera. This rare blood disease is seen in people who live at high altitudes and those exposed to radiation.
The people there, workers, I mean, we didn't think there was anything wrong with it. You couldn't see it and nothing else, so we just thought you could eat the darn stuff and it wouldn't hurt you at all. So we didn't pay it too much attention. We had somebody supposed to be checking us out and checking with it. And we depended on them to do their job the same as we were doing ours as a mechanic.
4 years after leaving the Savannah River plant, George Couch tested positive for tritium in his blood.
I think the tritium comes out in the urine and shows up in the water. He has a body burden of tritium, is the way the doctor described it. He's willing for his body to go for medical purposes. So am I.
No health study has ever been taken in this area. Most people are beginning to suspect that it is affecting the health of our citizens, that we are having more cancers and more health problems. The doctors seem to be a little bit more alarmed than they used to be. They used to laugh at our suggestion that it was causing problems in our population.
Evelyn Couch started a petition to get a health study done in the communities surrounding the plant, but many residents were reluctant to cooperate.
If it's something from the plant, maybe there's something we could do to correct it that make things right. A lot of the people mistake the petition and think that we mean to close the plant down, you know. Or I'm afraid to sign it. I'm afraid of my job. I'm afraid to sign it. I'm afraid of my pension. I'm afraid to sign it because some of my family works there.
Evelyn Couch's petition was denied. No outside studies of contamination at Savannah River have been undertaken. For 35 years, DuPont dumped toxic and radioactive liquid wastes directly into open pits at the rate of 200,000 gallons a day. Turtles swimming in these pits became contaminated with strontium-90, one of the most dangerous elements giving off strong radiation. They were discovered at various locations outside the plant, including a commercial hog farm.
We have captured many of them and brought them back on the plant site. We have fully apprised the owners of the land where the animals have been that this has been the case. Obviously, the levels were high enough to detect and to be of concern to us because we are taking action to try to eliminate this problem.
It's not a very professional thing to have contaminated turtles walking off the Savannah River plant, particularly with strontium-90.
I'm an environmentalist myself, and I like to hunt, fish, and enjoy my freedom. So we always get back to that. But the worst environment I can think of is to be cold and hungry and out of work. And if the environmentalists have their way, that's the way we're going to be. I'm talking about the arch environmentalists now. I'm not talking about responsible environmentalists who certainly, there is a place for that kind of activity.
Lawless realized that the enormous problems the Energy Department was facing were not being addressed from the inside. He had to make a decision. He resigned. He then found work as an assistant professor at Payne College in Augusta, Georgia, for 1/3 of his former salary.
I knew that I did not want to be an engineer or a scientist in that sort of an organization any longer. And it was a very personal thing for me, and I just felt like that my own feelings just had to give, and they had to get out of the way, that the issues were too large, and that the problem, the contamination was too large, and that we had to do something about it. So I felt like, even though I didn't want to, I felt like someone had to make a stand.
Our next speaker is Bill Lawless.
What self-regulation means is that the scientific method and scientific peer review have been replaced by the DOE bureaucracy. Although the use of cardboard boxes for wastes, seepage basins for radioactive and hazardous liquids dumped from reactors into the soil, and the lack of improved airborne waste gas recovery equipment at SRP reactors is less dramatic than the loss of a space shuttle, the DOE management of radioactive effluents are no less real and have the potential for far more widespread deleterious health effects. I think what's needed is that the Department of Energy self-regulation must be replaced with local peer review groups.
I think it was ironical that in my zeal to avoid the Korean War, I wound up inadvertently in a plant manufacturing the world's most destructive weapons.
Art Dexter's visit to the tritium vault changed his life.
I guess my thoughts were filled with the many discussions we'd had over our noon hours about the Vietnam War. And then with this added to this burden, it seemed like more than I really wanted to be involved in. I felt that moralistically I had to take a stand at this point and ask out of this kind of work.
He would no longer share in the secrets of atomic research. DuPont management transferred him into ecological studies and reactor safety. He worked on these problems until he retired. Later, Dexter felt compelled to act against the nuclear weapons industry to which he had devoted his life.
We have also been fortunate enough to be involved in trying to polish up and improve a pastoral letter on peace by the Methodist bishops in recent times.
He also wrote letters to the editor of the Aiken newspaper criticizing the plant. He started a local peace group and organized a watch for nuclear warhead-carrying trucks.
A11987, you copy?
Yeah, I sat down in the road, tried to block the main artery going in to manufacture the plutonium bomb. It was a symbolic gesture. And we tried to dramatize to those workers as they drove in there that morning that they were making a bomb that would destroy millions and millions of people.
I don't like nuclear weapons, but I also don't like the use of cardboard boxes in the radioactive waste burial ground. And the thing that I found appalling is that the same people that use cardboard boxes, the same people are also designing our nuclear weapons and running the nuclear weapons program for our nation's defense. But it's ironic that the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy, the organizations that are built to protect and defend us, actually have led us to live in terror.
In the wake of the Chernobyl disaster, concern across the United States arose over the Energy Department's aging weapons facilities. Once widely touted as an economic boon, the Savannah River plant's presence was openly debated. It was reported that the Energy Department was routinely releasing large amounts of airborne radioactive gases into the atmosphere and covering up serious reactor accidents, including incidents of fuel rods melting during operations. A surprise announcement by DuPont stated that after 38 years, the company was resigning as operating manager of the Savannah River plant. In leaving, the company claimed no responsibility for the legacy of radioactive contamination left behind. Because facilities at Savannah River and other plants are dangerously worn out, the Energy Department seeks billions of dollars to modernize their bomb-building factories. The department also seeks money to build a new generation of nuclear reactors. This could extend the arms race for at least another 40 years.
I don't think we as a nation or as a society or as a world can any longer afford to take nice, neat little problems, package them up, and assign them to bureaucracies and expect those problems to be solved. We just cannot do that. We have to participate in this ourselves. We have to stay involved. And if we can't stay involved, maybe we shouldn't get into them.
We don't know we've got it. We don't know what to do with it. That's the thing of it. If we've got it and don't know what to do with it, why should we need more? We ought to find out some way of doing something with it or getting rid of it before we start making more for another stockpile.
Brings up the question, why do we continue to produce these things? Why do we continue to put our people in jeopardy just even by things of this kind where we're transporting them through cities and over highways and into the very lives of the populace? Perhaps I can't throw the first stone. Again, I'm not without sin. I think that I could wish that my life had run entirely different. I'm just grateful that I've lived long enough to have an opportunity to view things differently, though, turn my thinking around and recognize what's going on. Or I hope that my view is freer of the stigmatism that I once had.
I felt personally humiliated because I did not speak out at a very critical, a very pivotal time. And so I took that humiliation back with me to the Savannah River plant and slowly began to confront myself and to resolve the issues within myself and to know what I had to do and to go forward from that point on. It's a very slow process, but it's a very difficult process for most people. At least it was for me, to confront yourself and to come to terms with it and then to finally start doing what you think is right. And then the more that you do it, the easier it becomes.